Hello again. Welcome to another adventure in reading and writing with Equipped Classroom and me, Mrs. Davis. Today's lesson is on a story called Those Three Wishes, which I did not write, and it is not true, but it is a super fun fictional story that your students will enjoy. In the meantime, a quick reminder to you about some of the housekeeping things that we have in place with Equipped Classroom materials. First of all, our goal is always to create fun videos that excite your class, whether it's public, private, homeschool setting, in a rigorous with real-life reading and writing experiences. As former educators, we know full well how time-consuming preparing curriculum can be on a daily basis. So if you're homeschooling, these lessons are going to offer you a chance to give your students high-quality reading and writing instruction without the burden falling on you to put it together. The videos and accompanying teaching decks are also super helpful if you need to prepare sub-lessons. They're done for you. Just send this video and your copy of the teaching deck to your sub and move on with your day. Therefore, this video has been created for you to use as a complete lesson or as a supplement to your own in-class instruction. Please visit the Equip website to learn how you can receive for free the matching teaching slide deck with this video. The link to our website is simple, equipclassroom.org. However, you can also find a hot link located in the YouTube homepage and in the details at the bottom of this video. Also, you can find them on the last page of the teaching deck. While you're at it, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It gives us so many opportunities to continue creating lessons for you. And finally, if you have any questions or ideas for future topics, please email us at janice@equipclassroom.org. And now, a few more housekeeping notes for this specific lesson, and then we'll begin. First, a reminder about our copyright. This exact slide deck is linked in the equipclassroom.org website, and you can have it for free. All you have to do is request it. The link for the YouTube overview shows you another place where you can find this website. Every video and every slide deck is free, and we want people, teachers, homeschool teachers, parents, whomever it may be, we want you to be able to use these. But we ask that you please remember to follow the copyright requests that we have on this page about anything you do modifying or using the material. Thank you. As always, we include references to the most significant standards to help you organize your lessons and pacing throughout the year. For this lesson, the scenes are actually shown digitally through the video, or they're on the slides if you're choosing to do this in person. Make sure you copy this chart that is linked on this slide before you begin the lesson so your students can see it. A link to the chart that I'm referring to is in the slide deck, on this slide in the speaker notes, and it's also on the last page of the slide deck. It is a student interactive worksheet. Likewise, don't forget to complete these pre-directives before you start your lesson or this video. It's important that you have your students arranged in groups that you want working together today because they'll be interacting and taking notes together. And then midway through the lesson, you're going to rearrange them into a jigsaw format so that every new group has one person from one of the original groups. If you need a review of what a jigsaw format looks like, you can click on the jigsaw and it will take you to a link that re-explains it for you. And finally, this part of the lesson is not included in the video itself for the students because it's interactive, but it's a fun way to start it off. So I recommend that you pull this link up on a separate tab. It's called Games for Thinking for Your Brain. And there's all kinds of brain teasers included. The one that this links to is called the Image Quiz. And it really will get your students thinking about what happens when they look at something and they make an impression of it before they know what the whole thing really is, which is kind of what this lesson is about. So it's a fun way to get them thinking and going at the beginning. But again, this is not included in the student portion of the lesson because you'll need to pull up a separate tab and do this one on your own. So even if you're using the video lesson, you're going to need to pull this up separate and do this with them before you start the video. The next slide is going to start the student-centered portion of the lesson. So if you're doing the hook, you'll do that first and then have this slide deck queued up to the next slide so the video lesson can begin. I'll pause quietly to give you a place where you can have it ready to go. Hello students, welcome back to another adventure in reading and writing with Equip Classroom and Mrs. Davis. Today's story is about wishes. If you could have 3 wishes, what would you wish for? Share with your neighbor quickly. For today's activity, you're going to explore some clues from a story to see if you can predict the order of events. So we're looking at how pivotal scenes help you infer and understand theme and character development of a story. But we're putting this fun little mystery twist to it. So let's quickly go over the directions to make sure that everyone is ready to give your very best to this group work. Teachers, if you haven't already given the students the worksheet that goes along with this, you might want to do that now. First of all, in this mystery game, you're going to be reading pivotal scenes that will be posted on the screens. And then you're going to make predictions about where that scene ties into the whole story. Is it in the beginning, the middle, the end? You'll have to discuss why you've made that choice. And then you're going to need to write your guess and elaboration down on the worksheet that your teacher is giving you. The left column tells you the scene that you will also see on the screen. The middle column is where you will write B for beginning, M for middle, or E for end to tell where your prediction is that that scene goes in the story. And then you need to explain why you've chosen that. The far right-hand column is called sequence. You'll save that one for later in the lesson when you will actually number the 5 scenes in order that you think they show up in the story. Once we've read over each scene, then you're going to have a few more minutes to adjust your notes and maybe make some changes. As you see new scenes throughout the game, you might change your thinking about previous ones. That's okay. As a group, you can go back and modify if you need to. When we're looking at this prediction game, you're going to work with your group. Again, you're going to decide if the scene is in the beginning, the middle, or the end. Think about everything you've learned about plot and about story development as you make these decisions. You might even use these elaboration questions over here to help you in your decision. Looking at the scene, if it's the beginning of the text, what do you think would happen next? If you can't come up with what would happen next, it probably isn't the beginning. It might be in the middle or the end. If it's in the middle of the story, what do you think happened before it? What do you think will happen next? If it's at the end of the story, what do you think the story is mostly about? And as you see each scene, how does it help you learn more about the story? Now remember, you're looking for key words in the scenes that help you understand the beginning, which would be the exposition. Those are where the characters, the setting, and the conflict are described. The middle, where you have the rising action and the climax, and the ending, the falling action and resolution. I'm going to give you a clue. These are not that easy, so you have to really think about it and begin to piece them together. Are you ready for your first scene? As you read it, pay close attention again to the words and the phrases. Make sure that you talk to your group before you make your predictions, but everybody writes, not just one person. Okay, here we go. First scene. Read it to your group. Discuss where you think it might be in the story. And as you discuss it, make notes on where you think this shows up and prove it with evidence from why you thought that. And then make sure that you don't write anything in the sequence column because we're going to do that at the end. Your teacher is either going to start the timer or pause the video for 2 minutes while you and your group begin your predictions with this first scene. Go. Okay, here's your next scene. Follow the same format with this one. Discuss and make notes with your group, beginning, middle, or end, and why. Again, your teacher will pause the video or start the timer. You have 2 minutes. Go. Now we're at the third scene. What do you think about this one? In your conversation this time, Make sure you think about the first two you've read. By this point, you should begin to question whether you feel like those still are wherever you predicted they would be. Do you still think they're in the beginning, the middle, or the end? Are you beginning to rethink those sequences? If so, it's okay to make changes in your notes. You have 2 more minutes. Your teacher will pause the video or start the timer now. Alrighty, let's look at this one. Now make sure you think about the previous scenes because you've got a lot of information now. And this is a really short story, so you have some significant sections out of the story. You might need to really rearrange things if you've been adding your ideas together and begin to question whether or not you want to make some adjustments in your predictions. You have 2 more minutes to process this scene, starting now. And here's your last scene. When you read and analyze this one, think carefully. Where would this go? And once your group has made your final decisions, then go back and put the sequences in order 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Make sure that you still agree on the beginning, middle, and end for each one of the scenes. Make sure you have your evidence written down, and then finalize the last column with 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But make sure that the middle column is only naming beginning, middle, and end. It's the right-hand column where you number it. You have 2 more minutes to make your arrangements finalized, and then we're moving forward. You may begin now. So let's see how you've done. You're going to rearrange now into new groups. Each new group will have a member of one of your original groups. And in your new groups, you're going to take turns sharing your notes and your thoughts about the sequence of the story. As you hear the other perspectives, feel free to modify your own notes if they've convinced you. Make sure that your evidence and your elaboration also is strong enough to convince the other people in your group that they might need to make some changes as well. If you have all of the things in the same order, then just talk about your evidence and how it overlaps. Look for common features. Those are probably the strongest pieces of evidence. Look for ways that you can continue to prove your thinking. Your teacher will give you some time to do this now. And when the timer goes off, we're going to be looking at the next stage of this activity. You may begin with your new groups as soon as your teacher has you rearranged. Sorry. If you haven't already done so, go back into your original groups now, and then chat quickly about any of the changes that you made when you were with your jigsaw groups. Based on that conversation and your thinking, what do you think is the theme of this story? That's your last box on this page. What would you believe this whole story is about, just based on the 5 scenes you have? Make sure you write that theme in a complete sentence in the bottom box of your page. And then after you've discussed this one, we're actually going to read the story. So once more, your teacher will pause and give you time to regroup in your original groups and finish up your thinking, your comparisons, and your theme. You may begin that as soon as you have been moved back to your original groups. All right, it's time to read the story. I'm going to read this aloud to you. As I do, I want you to check the boxes in your notes to see how accurate you were with the beginning, middle, and ending predictions. Looking at the sequence of your columns, you may need to rearrange as well. If you didn't get them in the right order, it's okay. You can change. It's fine. But the story moves really fast, so you want to make sure you're listening if you're making note changes as well. Here we go. No one ever said that Melinda Alice was nice. That wasn't the word used. No, she was clever, even witty. She was called, never to her face, however, Melinda Malice. Melinda Alice was clever and cruel. Her mother, when she thought about it at all, hoped Melinda would grow out of it. To her father, Melinda's very good grades mattered. It was Melinda Alice, back in the 8th grade, who had labeled the shy, myopic new girl contamination and was the first to pretend that anything or anyone that touched by the new girl had to be cleaned, inoculated, or avoided. High school had merely given Melinda Alice greater scope for her talents. The surprising thing about Melinda Alice was her power. No one trusted her, but no one avoided her either. She was always included, always in the middle, and if you had ever seen her, pretty and witty, in the center of a group of students walking past your house, you would have thought, there goes a natural leader. Melinda Alice left for school early one day. She wanted to study alone in a quiet spot she had, because there was going to be a big math test, and Melinda Alice was not prepared. The A mattered, so Melinda Alice walked to school alone, planning her studies. She didn't usually notice nature much, so she nearly stepped on a beautiful snail that was making its way across the sidewalk. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Did you hear anything that makes you revisit your notes? Possibly rearrange some scenes? If so, make changes quickly, and then I'm going to move on to the next part of the story. By the way, that was the exposition of the story. We're moving into the rising action next. All right, let's move on. Ugh, yucky thing, thought Melinda Alice, and then she stopped. Not wanting to step on the snail accidentally was one thing, but now she lifted her shoe to crush it. Please don't, said the snail. Why not? Retorted Melinda Alice. I'll give you 3 wishes, replied the snail evenly. Agreed, said Melinda Alice. My first wish is that my next... She paused for a split second. That my next 1,000 wishes come true. She smiled triumphantly and opened her bag to take out a small notebook and pencil to keep track. Melinda Alice was sure she heard the snail say, What a clever girl, as it made it safely to the ivy bed beside the sidewalk. During the rest of the walk to school, Melinda Alice was occupied with wonderful ideas. She would have beautiful clothes. Wish number 2, that I will always be perfectly dressed. And she was just that. True, her new outfit was not a whole lot different from the one she had on that she'd left the house with, but that only meant that Melinda Alice liked her own taste. After thinking for a while, she wrote, Wish number 3. I wish for pierced ears and small gold earrings. Her father had not allowed Melinda to have pierced ears, but now she had them anyway. She felt her new earrings and shook her beautiful hair in delight. I could have anything. A stereo, tapes, TV, video disc, moped, car, anything. All my life. She hugged her books to herself in delight. Let's pause again for a moment. What are you thinking now at this part of the story? How are your predictions looking and your sequencing? Do you need to make any adjustments? We're right smack dab in the rising action of the story, so go ahead and make some adjustments quickly if you need to. And then we'll finish. All right, time for the ending. By the time she reached school, Melinda was almost an altruist. She could wish for peace. Then she wondered, is the snail that powerful? She felt her ears and looked at her perfect blouse, skirt, jacket, and shoes. Why, I could make ugly people beautiful. I could cure cripples. She stopped. The wave of altruism had washed past. I could pay back the people who deserve it. Melinda Alice looked at the school and all the kids. She had an enormous sense of power. They all had to do what I want now. She walked down the crowded halls to her locker. Melinda Alice could be sweet. She could be witty. The bell rang for homeroom. Melinda Alice stashed her book, slammed the locker shut, and just barely made it to her seat. Hey, Melinda Alice, whispered Fred. You know that big math test next period? Oh no, grimaced Melinda Alice. Her thoughts raced. That darn snail made me late, and I forgot to study. I'll blow it, she groaned. I wish I were dead. And that is the end of the story. What happened? What do you think is the climax of this story? What do you think was the resolution of the story? Those are tricky questions. I'm going to have your teacher pause the video again for you to take some time to discuss that, and then she'll share the real answers with you. What was the climax, and what was the resolution? See if you can figure that out. All right, now that you've come to that, it's time for you to show what you've learned. You have a back side on that notebook, on that note page that you've been working on. Make sure you read each of the 4 squares, the questions in each one carefully, and think about the story. You can use your copy of the story to help you remember what had happened and to find the very best evidence to prove your thinking. Your teacher may have given you a hard copy of the story, but if not, and you're working on a digital copy of the worksheet, you can click on the title of the story just below the chart on the exit ticket side, and that will give you a digital copy of the story to look at. You can quote evidence from the text directly using quotes around it, or you can summarize it in your own words. Either way, you want to make sure that you include evidence to prove your thinking for each one of the questions that you're answering. Do your best work, please. Make sure you include solid evidence. For this part, you may not work with your group. Your teacher's going to pause the video here and give you time to finish this up, and then we'll come back for our connections to real life piece. For our wrap up today, we're going to look at a few more points, as always, on how you might be able to apply something from this lesson and this story to your life. I hope that it's not something quite like what she did with her last wish. That was pretty sad, because this is a fictional story and it's pretty crazy. But you can make connections. Whenever you're reading, think about things that make you feel like you know it or you can connect it to something in life. These questions are prompts that might help you begin that route. You can talk about them in your groups or with a partner, or you can just individually begin to think about it. Eventually, you're going to choose one question that you can most relate to and write well about it in your notebook for 10 or 15 minutes or online. Your teacher will give you further directions from here on how to go about doing this. Enjoy. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed our story. It's quite crazy. And I hope you'll take some time maybe to share your story, The 3 Wishes, with somebody else today. Have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon.